things. Manly Seagulls, our final one for this show. We have one more after this, and we've got to get that in next week before the trials start, actually, but that's another topic. Lachlan Croker, 1%.
Much nicer hookers in Manly to compare, but
first 5 games for Manly, I've got onto it early. South Sydney, that's obviously out in Vegas. Can't wait. I'm jealous I'm not there, but anyway. Roosters next, Parramatta, Dragons, Penrith. Tell you what, not kind. Not kind at all, especially if you're hoping players like Turbo can kick it to start off with and hit the ground running. I don't know. That's the draw you're ideally wanting him to start with. So,
well, it doesn't. That's the thing. Like, a bit. After round 5, it doesn't really get much better. They play the Warriors, they play the Titans, and they play Parramatta again.
Yeah, I hate that. Don't start me on that because that is a completely another topic that I could go off on. They should have every team play each other once first and then go into playing teams second. Like, I think that is an absolute joke and that needs to be fixed for...
Yeah, it definitely does too.
And like, bit of fairness.
What's the deal with that? You know, I mean, like, it doesn't really need to happen. They get quite a nice run very late in the year, but it could be, you know, a little bit too late to look at. So it isn't a nice run at all, especially not for their attacking options. But I think defensively they could be okay. But Lachlan Croker is not what you want. A bit boring, a bit just bread and butter.
Hookers.
Look, you can
something
talk quite highly of them.
They've
had some in the past. There's been some good hookers through Manly. They have.
Lachlan Croker for mine is not an option, but there is one option here. Gordon. Chan Kum Tong. Honestly, that isn't. I say that a few times.
Chan Kum Tong.
There you go. Said
CKT
already. 238K. I will say this now, and I say always touch wood. Lachlan Croker, 4 super coaches out there, have a rest. You deserve a holiday. Go rest your body this year and just chill out. You honestly deserve it.
He does.
You don't need to push yourself this year.
Yeah.
Let Gordon do the hard work. Let him come into it. Let him become an 80-minute hooker and just let him do the work.
Let him take your job.
Let him take your job.
That's all right. Yeah, you know, Croker's the kind of guy that you look at, and I reckon he doesn't complain about it either. I reckon he just goes,
he deserves a rest. His body would be sore.
Fine. Yeah, I'm all good for that. I'm a bit beaten now. I've copped a few hits. Yeah, give it to Gordon. What an exciting little player this guy is.
Oh, I'm excited by him. I need him to get some minutes because he's definitely an option.
Yeah, I think so. I think he could be, potentially. Obviously, it's a bit risky. 4% ownership's quite high, but again, 238, obviously, they're just trying to find the cash, and it's nothing you want. But again, at some point, your hook is going to have a buy, and you are not going to have one. So, something to consider. But yeah, one for the future, man, definitely. And I'm not even going to talk about Carl Lawton. I'm so off Carl Lawton.
No thanks. No, I'm not for that. The prop forward, and finally, one of the locks, Jake Jabojevic, named. Oh, he does have the duel, so they've covered their bases. That should be all locks.
That's why.
All locks should have duel.
They should.
Paseka 1%. No, thank you at 555K.
Yeah,
Jake Jabojevic 545K, 3%. He was relevant in the past. I just don't think he is as much anymore. Especially with, as we've already said, there's that much mid-tier options out there for, especially the second row side of things. I'm not. Tafoa Sipley. I never really said his proper name. I just said Toa Sipley normally. That felt weird. I had to double check that a few times there.
Yeah.
0% ownership, 531K, understandable. Bullymore was a sort of a guy that floated in and out of a fair few teams I've seen last year. 1%, 431 was able to do a job here and there. More so in the second row, but again, I'm not interested. Not interested in any of their front row forwards.
Traditionally, not really. No, they're a bit bit of just toilers. Paseka and Sipley, I remember last year they actually both had pretty decent little price points to come in at. They weren't a bad option, to be honest with you, but they are priced up now, so we kind of missed that. But you're talking both like mid 300s, mid 400s, which is kind of where so that's actually a good comparison to make too. If you're trying to build your front rowers and you're looking for value, these guys where they're priced now is that bit too far out of it. But where they were last season is where you can find some good value at the moment. And this is what they'll do. This is where you see them come in 50, 55 plus if they have a good year. And then obviously they just sort of price themselves out of contention. And then you just start again looking at the next mid 400, mid 300. But no one in mind to be an option anymore. Poor Jake Turbo is just going to go out there and get flogged again. But at least he's dual. So
bash
3%
himself
ownership.
to a standstill, the poor boy.
Basically, just meat and potatoes.
Second row forward,
Yeah,
the premium to talk about.
big gun.
Amalo Olakawatu, 6% ownership, 699.8. Just make him 700, please, guys. 68.5 average last year.
Yeah, weapon, but not a good run. So, what do you do with that? I'll tell you what I do with that. At some point, personally, you look at him. I compare him a lot of the time. I compare him, not put him with, but I compare him a lot price point wise with Nakora. For output points and just similarities in general. And he's obviously got a much nicer run for the price that they both come in at right next to each other. So unfortunately, that's one thing that would turn me off him. But I think he's a pretty viable pick in general if you think he's a bit fixture proof, and it just depends on how Manly look with the fit Turbo, I would say.
Yeah.
You just want it to go down his side a bit more though. So because that's the thing. There's not a great deal of talent in the forward packs for that sort of attacking outlet besides him at all.
Yeah, actually. No, there isn't.
There's nothing else there.
Because we don't know what's happening with Schuster.
Done. Yeah, no. All their attacks done through Turbo and Cherry Evans and Garrick. So all the other forwards just need to do is just to be a forward. But at least this gives you an avenue to actually channel some attack through, which is really nice for him. Whether or not you want to spend up 700, I just don't know. He was around the same price last season too, and it wasn't too bad for him. But again, it wasn't massive upside games. It was just a lot of consistent 60s, 70s, up to 80. Besides the very last game where he scored 177, that probably didn't really do us any favors for his average. But that was the game. Remember, Cooler went nuts too. Cherry Evans went ballistic. They just tore shreds in that last game. And anyone that had him, because that's the thing, man, anyone that had trades left over at the end of last season and brought in Manly against the Tigers climbed up the rankings like you wouldn't believe. And it was just on the back of these Manly guys. Yeah, I had none left.
I didn't have trades for the last, I think, 5 weeks. So thanks, guys. Don't follow me on Supercoach.
There you go. There's one thing to improve on. No, I was like 2 weeks out, and then I thought I should have a good run here. And then, all it took was that freaking game. One of them, just one of those players would have been unbelievable. But doesn't have top 5. Killer. I know. That's all it took. Anyway, just a lot of consistent 60 to 80, and that's not bad, but it's, again, you're paying 700k for it. Like, you want that massive upside. Probably not for me for that reason.
Second last one I want to talk for the second row was Josh Schuster. I just mentioned 460k, 3% ownership at the moment. He is once again somehow just had a preseason of hell. We've recently found out chickenpox, finger injury. But there was another injury I've completely mind blanked on.
Yeah, it was
something. He
muscle injury.
I don't know what it is, but he just can't seem to get it all together, and that's the concern for mine. And especially 460, even it's not a lot, but it's for mine. It's just too much for a Josh Schuster where we're just unsure of what we're going to get from him. So I'm just not.
I was holding some pretty high hopes for him too this season, because we knew that coming into it. At the moment, he looks like a doubt for I don't know how long. Maybe he might be back early days for the beginning of the year. He could be. Chicken pox and a finger injury, you'd think he probably would be. But again, like chicken pox, like what
I've
the
not
fuck?
heard about chickenpox for
Shit, man.
ages. I didn't
You
even
didn't
know it
get that shit when
existed
you were a
still.
kid? What the fuck? These manly kids, man, they're a bit too sheltered to get chicken pox as children. So, um, he was going back into the second row, and if you just go off his one season that he's played in the second rows, he scored over, I think he averaged somewhere in the 60s. It was really decent. And if that was going to be where he was going to get back into at a 460K price point, you're thinking immediately there's upside there. But again, it doesn't last. Not with him. It only takes him not even a trial game to do injuries, so or get chicken pox. But yeah, I did ponder the idea that maybe he might become an option, and it didn't last very long. So that's all that we can say about Schuster. But yeah, he's lost his 5'8" duel. That was kind of half his ownership last year, and wasn't a very good 5'8", so deserves to lose
Yeah.
it. No,
No thanks.
thank you.
Finally, Burbo. Ben
Ben
Trebojevic,
Turbo. Yeah.
277K. And we always seem to talk about him, Supercoach, the last 3 years, I think it's been. And it always seems to go, this is his year. Like,
Poorly.
we're going to make some money off him.
Yeah.
Again, if Schuster isn't there, I've been told he will have the spot whenever Schuster is out. And who knows, he's been having a big preseason from all reports.
I've heard that too.
14% ownership. I don't mind it.
Yeah,
In the
it's cheap enough.
center wing option,
Definitely.
if you can get that sort of game time, like if that's round one comes along team list and he's there starting second rower,
Oh,
I'll
bro.
actually have him in, even if
Yeah.
I know it's because Schuster's not there, I'll still have him because I know that means he's thereabouts and he's going to be pushing Schuster along all year, and I have more faith in Ben Trebojevic than I do Schuster turning up each week.
I suppose, yeah, I reckon he's gonna I can't even say he's gonna turn up more than Schuster because that's his problem as well. He's more injury prone than Tommy. Again, he's so cheap that you kind of can just get away with it. But it wouldn't surprise me he goes out there and it's 3 minutes in and he's injured. He's knocked out, he's pulled a hamstring, he's broken his collarbone. Who knows what he can do, man? It's just anything that can happen to someone can happen to him. But that's the only sort of downside I see out of it because he goes into the second row and he's playing at 277. Like there isn't anyone else like that at the moment that we know of yet, anyway. Because he could probably do all he has to do is anything over a 30, 35 points, and you're going to be making something. You know, I'd be pretty happy to flip him for 100 plus, 150. Obviously, you
Yeah,
want a lot more out of
definitely.
him, but if that's just a quick, in and out kind of thing, it's fine. But there's not huge upside there. But the dual flexibility is very handy for his price. And yeah, I heard he was actually really good playing these games and training in the second row and stuff. So maybe, maybe he comes through. But 14%, if he does get that spot, I think the hesitancy might still be there, just about how long he'll last playing a game before he gets injured. But I can see it going up
I'll
if it
say
just gets more
now,
public.
if he starts round one, 14% will double to
Yeah,
28%, I think.
yeah, for sure. If it's a starting
I think
second
even
row
though
spot,
there'll be hesitancy, but there'll be a lot of people getting on.
there's too much upside to really worry about it. You don't really want to get left behind on that. Again, you've got a couple of weeks to do that, so you can afford to let him run if he's going to be the second rower, or if Schuster's going to be playing and you don't have him, and then you think, okay, look, he has played 2 games now at second row, and his break even's quite negative. I can cash out of one of my other centers, get him in for a price hike, and then go somewhere else with it. So you don't have to start with him. You know what I mean? It's not necessary if you plan on selling down to get someone with a good break even. And it just depends. Depends on how long Schuster takes to get back into it. If he's gonna not, obviously, he could probably start with it. Um, I just feel like they'd have other options than Ben Turbo to be their fill-in second rower. Like you got Corey Waddell that could probably do it. Bullimore, you know what I mean? But
he doesn't have. They don't have brothers that are very powerful at Manly. And
you
I'm not
reckon
saying that is the
it's
reason
just
Ben is
you
getting
reckon
picked.
it's just to
I'm
get the
not.
turbos, like like triple
I think the
turbos?
Turbos have a special place in Manly, and rightly
Yeah,
so.
give
And
him the
the thing
key to
is,
Manly, but it's not for
you
Ben.
did mention a key point where like his fitness hasn't always been there for Ben. I just think from an NRL point of view, plus a Supercoach point of view, I'm just waiting because I know if he can get it right for a season, let's say it's this season hypothetically, I can see a price rise of at least 300,000 for him if he can get it right and stay on the
Mm,
field. That
yeah,
would be amazing. Like he'd be
perfect
one of those
world.
players you almost just hold and just go, "Yep, sweet, done." And from an NRL point of view, I can see him really establishing himself as a first grade footballer. We just keep waiting for it. I feel like, as I said at the start, it feels like it's been 2 to 3 years now where we've said the same thing about him year in, year out, and we just haven't got there, and he's stayed at this sort of price range.
Hmm.
I know when it does happen, I wanna be there and wanna be on him for when it does happen. That's the thing that keeps getting me in, and I think with Jake there, with Tom there, I know it's not the reason why he's getting picked on his own merit, but it's definitely helps having some brothers high up in
Oh,
clubs.
100%, man. 100%. If he didn't have the last name Trebojevic, do you really think he would be pushing for it as much as he is currently?
Probably
Not
not.
to
And they're
disrespect
also
him.
probably
So
helping
obviously he's
push him.
worked himself into that position for a reason, and there's been
Yeah.
players that haven't with bigger surnames, with Johnses and the like. So you know what I mean? Like it's not just a name thing, but he just needs to I don't know. You need to not get injured. Like you try and say that to someone, it's impossible. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but uh, fingers crossed for him that he does do better this season because yeah, he has got potential to go up a lot in cash and have a good year for himself. Finally, string a good year together and might actually make something for himself instead of just being the younger brother. You know what I mean? I'm sure he wants that more than anyone.
Yeah, no, I agree. Moving on to the halfback role, and I think we can just talk about halfback 5'8" together because the only 5'8" option is Luke Brooks, who you can get at halfback. Cherry Evans, 2% ownership, 782K. We sort of mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking like he might be the option when it's not Nico Hines or Cleary, but the more I think about it, I think he's not the next best option. We've already spoken to someone on this episode who we think is, and I'd even probably argue, especially with the draw, Moses is a better option than
Mm,
Cherry Evans. I think
that's a fair
that
point.
sort of has hindered Cherry Evans a little bit. So I think he's down to about maybe fifth for mine. Where look, as an eighth draftee, I'd probably still won't get him, but we yeah, I don't think for mine Cherry Evans isn't an option, especially that price range. Like for mine, if I think
Yeah,
about
it's
it,
a
for a
bit too much.
fifth choice option, I don't want to be spending 782K on a fifth choice halfback option.
Yeah, besides, I just went back and had a look at his scores previously too, and besides that 21 year that you can't really count too much. Um, there's a lot of 65 averages in there, barring last season, which, to be fair, has been one of his best years for a long time. Um, and his two best seasons ever really have been off the back of really good turbo seasons as well. So,
Mm.
um, if that can continue, I can see it. But again, where he's priced at, you sort of just go, is it just worth getting the little bit extra and going up to Cleary from
Yes.
Cherry Evans there? And the answer is yeah, every day kind of thing. So um, he will have those games obviously where he'll have a better score than Nathan Cleary for one or two here and there, but overall it's pretty drastic at the end of the season, where the points are scored. But he's a great option. I just think, it's just a little bit too much to push him off the top two. So yeah, I don't know. Their fixture run doesn't really help it either. Like if they had a much better run, because obviously the Sharks do, and Nico Hines pretty well we've discussed is a guaranteed lock for that reason. Cleary doesn't have the best run with the Panthers, but I would say that Manly's probably worse for them as a club, like an individual club point with their level compared to what Penrith are going to do to anyone else. I still feel like Cleary scores more than him, even with a comparable run, which isn't ideal for
Oh,
anyone. But
definitely.
yeah, so if the run was much better, if it was like Sharks level or Eels level, I'd put up half an argument for it, and just to say, Turbo's going to be fit firing. You want to start off with it pretty hot. Obviously, Cherry Evans benefits every single time. Turbo's going for it too. But it's not the case. And I just feel like you're going to see a fair few average games to begin with.
It's funny as well. You mentioned his seasons are better for a Supercoach point of view when Turbo is actually there playing, because when I think about it, like you almost in a way think he'd step up and hold more points when Turbo wasn't there and he'd just be the main guy. But I understand why when you think about it and peel it back a bit, because they just bounce off each other. Like
Yeah.
he sets up the line break assist or the try assist for Turbo. There's often times where Turbo will break through the line and it's back on the inside to Cherry Evans. Like you just have that picture so many
Oh,
times,
it's great to
especially
see
a
too.
brookie, and then he's under the post. So it
Yeah.
does make a lot more sense. And look, if Turbo starts to become fit this year and he looks like the player of old, which is obviously a big ask because he was a freak, but hopefully he can get to at least the 90% mold of that player.
Mm.
Who knows? Maybe after Origin, when Cherry Evans seems to go on his runs a little bit more when it comes to points, you're looking then and thinking about him as an option. And you're looking at overall results. You're thinking, I just need to get someone who's going to be that point of difference for me, who gets me that extra couple of points. I'll take the gamble. He's generally,
Yeah.
that's when he comes into the Supercoach side of things, I feel. I don't think, as the 2% shows, he's not very much a start player and ride through with him, because Origin you got to contend with. You got to contend with what Turbo is going to be like. There's just so many question marks where I feel like in the halfback position, when there is your Clearys, your Hines, you don't want the question marks around these players. You want to have maximum one probably question mark, and you just want to go, all right, these are my sets and forgets. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that's the case too, and it's definitely not for him. I just had a quick look forward. I was a little bit curious about how, like, when their buy comes in and just what's around it, because obviously you do have Origin, and this can go for Turbo and those guys too, or anyone that's going to be picked for it. So we know that their first five, you're playing pretty much four of the best teams, barring obviously the Dragons in the middle there. You should win that comfortably. Um, they got the Warriors, Titans, Eels again, and then round 9 they got Raiders, Dolphins, and then Broncos 11. So that's round 11. Melbourne in round 12, bye in round 13, Panthers round 14.
Ooh,
So that little stretch there from the Broncos in 11 through to Melbourne in 12, a bye, and then the Panthers, and then you're talking Origin.
that's tough.
There's a good chance that you just do not want to touch any of them come the middle of the season. Like it might be worth a shout to start with a couple and get a couple months run out of him before any of that happens, but there really isn't, because the fixtures aren't amazing for it. Really, where I see their value is the very back end, like after Origin, like that's kind of where, and like you saw it last season too. Shit, anyone that had those guys in the last game fucking cleaned up big time because they just went crazy. And it could be another situation again this year where it's going to be one of those after Origin kind of things where they could probably string together a fair few games, but it's a long way away, and you're just kind of relying on Turbo to be fit that long into the season, and that's kind
It's a
of
big
where it lets
if.
off, really. Yeah, because I
Um,
realistically, now that I've seen that, I'm not really considering any Manly players up until probably round maybe 20.
that helps me move on, segue into the next one, because Luke Brooks, 560K, 8% ownership. We've already sort of touched on Luke Brooks, I believe, a few weeks ago, and I can't believe it's 8%. Think 8% is 7% too many. Like
Yeah,
I'll
it's
go out that far. Like for me personally, and you can agree or disagree afterwards, but the people that are talking about him saying, "Oh, he averaged this at the Tigers. There's upside. He's going to a better team. There's Turbo. There's Cherry Evans and stuff." That's one of his downfalls. There is Turbo.
it
There's
is
Cherry Evans. He's third
exactly.
string there. And if Cam Chung Tong comes into it, he's also a great running dummy half. He has that ability that could take away some of Brooks's real arsenal as well of being a sort of a running 5'8", who has that sort of attacking upside. And at the Tigers, even though he was always getting bashed by fans and the media, he was still their go-to guy on the field. So he was getting extra points because of that. He's not the go-to guy in Manly. He won't be the go-to guy at Manly. It will take two of their best players to become their go-to guy. And that if that does happen, we all know what happens to Manly. If that was to happen with Cherry Evans and Turbo to go down, you write the season off. There is no way in the world Manly would come out and win any sort of games. That would be heartbreaking for Manly. So whether he'd then become the main guy, he wouldn't poll many points because Manly would just be lost.
Yeah. I don't see. I can't really see the push for the Brooks movement. To be fair, man, I have seen a bit of it too, and it's unusual too
If it
because
was
at the
300,
Tigers,
if it was 300, sure.
Oh,
560 is a lot of money for what you're paying for.
yeah, for literally all this uncertainty too. Like he's been this shit side for so long as their main man, which doesn't really speak too much in the volume sort of thing for him. But again, it's a fresh start. How much of a role he gets next to Cherry Evans and Turbo doing all the work, because that's you saw it in the point stat for the forwards. No one does anything else as far as that goes besides those 2, 3. Throw Garrick in there as well. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of it for it. They haven't really had any. Well, even when Foran was there, they weren't really scoring too much points through him. So fantasy wise, anyway, for Supercoach, he wasn't very relevant. So I can't see Brooks being that guy for him, but people can. No, I'm just not seeing what the argument is for him because it's just there's just too much going on outside of him to worry about it. Sorry about that. The headphones got caught.
It's late night.
I know. Yeah, we're cooking, but yeah. Look, I don't know what to say, to be honest, about the Luke Brooks thing. It could go one of two ways. He could just be an average. He could actually go backwards in his point scoring because he has less to do himself. For that Tigers team, everything had to really try and go through him because he was their guy, but he's not even going to be close to that guy anymore. So whether that takes the pressure off him and allows him to just run the ball a little more and have a bit more freedom, he might pick up some points here and there. But I just don't see his importance being super high in that club compared to how it was at the Tigers.
No, I agree. And that's not taken away. I think from an NRL point of view, he's a fantastic signing for Manly. And I think it's exactly what he needs moving forward, a fresh start. And I think it's great for Manly to have that backup. And he's obviously going to be, it's hard to say serving an apprenticeship because he's so experienced, but he will be the one that takes over Cherry Evans when he does retire. And I think that's what the plan is in place there to understand the systems for a year or two and then go into that 7 role. So I love that from a point of view. I just can't see 8% Supercoach. Center wings, the premium guy, and we did mention there's other premium guys who we prefer over Manu. For mine, if Garrick is actually a center, he's not one of those guys I was talking about. At 722K, 10% ownership, you'd think at center, okay, he must be doing more work or something. That's good. I'd prefer him at wing. For me to choose him, I want him to be on the wing. Especially if Turbo's fit, because we know how good they can link up and what they can do. I don't really like him at center.
No, I didn't really think he did too bad at center. Obviously, he's got a bit more of that upside. That's the thing. He's obviously got that upside on the wing, and that's kind of how you want him to be. But man, he had a monster game at center. He scored 3 tries and got an assist. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, fuck.
3 tries, assists in his one game. He played a handful of games.
What did he get? 170 or something?
Yeah. Yeah, he got 3 tries, a try saver. Holy shit!
I'm making
3 tries, assists, a line break. Him at center, deadly. But again, he backed it up the next game with absolute piss all. Like,
there you go.
Really,
I'm back.
Really shit.
I'm back, bitches.
So yeah, and it was against the Eels. So he went from scoring 169 to scoring 100.
Not scoring points against us.
26. How do you do that?
Don't mess with us.
169.
Don't come into para thinking you're going to go and get 170 Supercoach points against us. We'll put you on your ass.
Yeah.
You don't score points against para.
No chance, mate. Dreaming. But yeah, either way, I think no matter where you put him, he's going to do a good job for you. That's kind of the point with him.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't be against someone starting with him being their premium center wing that they choose. Like, there's definitely upside. He's goal kicking in that, and
yeah. I still think for that price, I would prefer
too much.
Holmes.
Yes.
For the same reason, he kicks. Their runs a lot nicer.
Yeah.
You know, take your pick. But yeah, his ownership 10%. It's very high for a 722 center, considering how thin it is to get that sort of cash spread around. 10% is fucking crazy. So good on you if you've got that much coin to spend on him. But
I'd like to see the balance of some of their teams that have picked him.
No bench. That's
curious.
the thing. Just no bench.
The other thing quickly with Garrick, and this is a good point to make, especially for those newcomers to Supercoach, he is dual. Do not ever pick someone like that at fullback. Always have him at center. It is just the fundamentals of Supercoach.
Yes.
Even fullbacks, whenever you can have a fullback that you can pick at center wing, pick him at center wing. Free up fullback as much as you can to have fullbacks in.
Of course.
And free up your Supercoach team to have as many fullbacks as you can.
Basically, yeah, you've got 7 center wing spots to fill, and as soon as you can fill them, you're better off with it. And considering fullback traditionally is your highest scoring, you don't really want to be putting a winger or a center, an actual position, center or winger, in your fullback spot to take the rest. So yeah, handy little one for the new players out there that are trying to plug a hole. If they've got center and they're a fullback, play them at center.
Cooler. I think he's priced a bit more up after that final little run that he had, that big game. 581K. I just can't touch him. Move him to fullback. If Turbo goes down once more, I'm talking about him. I will be that time that happens in our episode. I'll probably enter the show and say, do whatever you can to make sure Cooler's in your team. But for now, staying back at center, I just no, thank you. Sub. No, thank you. Jackson Paulo. No, thank you. Tuipulotu. No, thank you.
Well, Tuipulotu looks like he's on the way out, and it looks like Paulo's on the way in. So, 476 is a bit pricey,
got to hope
but
of someone else.
You want to hope it's someone else?
Yes.
Vega.
No.
Who is it?
I want Tommy Talau in.
Tommy Talau?
I want the Jess Surges effect to take full effect. Him to go to a level. I think Tommy Talau is a decent young talent player. He's still quite young as well.
Yeah, he is.
I think he'll feed off the Manly again. That we're talking about it with Luke Brooks. He'll feed off players like Cherry Evans and Turbo. Basically, just put him in holes, just saying, "Run your lines. We will get you the ball when you need it." I would love him at 287K. I'm not going to say anything yet, but wait till team reveals on Thursday. I haven't even told you yet, but just keep an eye on it. Just keep an eye on things because
here we go.
Jackson Paulo for mine hasn't shown much, and he's been around now for a little bit, a few different clubs the last couple of years. Again, he's one of those players where I think at 476K from a Supercoach point of view, if he was going to do anything by now, he would have established himself at one of those clubs that he was at, where it felt like those sides couldn't get rid of him quick enough, whether that was salary cap reasons or whatever. But if he was going to be a quality player, they would have tried to find a way to make him stay. But I just feel like Talau has a bit more upside, a bit more promise.
Especially for the price.
And someone,
so much cheaper.
And someone that Manda can work with for a couple of years to come. And I hope it's that. So fingers crossed.
Almost 200K less, man. It's much more appealing. You hearing about Brad Parker moving to the forwards?
Yes, that is the rumor. I'm guessing he'll probably be like, he won't start on an edge, like unless. I don't want to talk too much about rugby league, but that's when it comes back to Schuster and you start scratching your head thinking there must be some stuff going on in that club at the moment and behind the scenes talk with Schuster and that being not rosy, that relationship or something, because you would not be going out there saying Brad Parker's becoming an edge forward if there was no need for it, because we just spoke about Ben Trebojevic. There's other players like Bullymore and that can do a job there as well. Like that feels like it overcrowds the market there all of a sudden, where if it's for Schuster's getting shopped around or whatever. We know there's continually denials about that, but there has to be something going on there. As just a rugby league fan, that's just getting murky.
Yeah, it also opens up a few doors as well to, less centre depth if that's the case, and then Talau can get a push in there, which is,
I'm an
stakes your
expert.
case a little bit more too. So, but then it also puts a point for Parker as well. If he's going to get a forward position, it's not bad for 330 as an out of position play. So, it makes potentially three players a bit more appealing. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I don't know how that one's going to go down, to be honest with you. So I was just hearing about it a bit. I've been seeing a couple of things here and there about Parker going into the forwards, and I thought it's a different one,
Well,
but
definitely a watch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure. Because it can make Talau look like a decent little option.
I would love to continue to talk to you into the night, but I know, just again, guys, peel back the curtain. We've started late once again, and it's almost edging on midnight for New South Wales. Unlucky for Jesse.
That's all right.
So we do have Tom Trbojevic to talk about. So I want to move on to him because that's obviously a little bit of a chat to have. The main chat, obviously, though, to have when it comes to Tom Trbojevic is the big if about his fitness. I've already said, we touched on it with Cherry Evans, so we've sort of already covered it a bit. I didn't like last year that he came back and there was chances of taking off and being how he could be, and he just wasn't doing it. He clearly wasn't fit and he was still playing. I don't want to see that. If he's not fit and he can't take off, I don't want to see him back in the game yet. I want to see him back in the game when he can play properly.
Yeah, he looked very lethargic last season.
Yeah,
he looked like he had
to be honest.
lost so much pace. Like he just didn't have it. It was pretty obvious too, actually. And I had him. Obviously, he started so low too because he come off that last season, which wasn't very good. But again, everything's injury related with him, so it's a hard one too. Like I can never imagine a fully fit Turbo, besides the 21 season, which you saw. You're talking 143 average. But again, that was still a broken year as well. So I don't think it's happened. A full season that's gone straight through. That's hot. 143 average.
Oh.
Isn't that just ridiculous? If we can get even close to that, I know. It's nuts, man. But that's the dream. That's the dream
to make you weak.
Yeah. If anyone's going to have more upside, I'd like to see it. As far as it goes, he's got to be the best player. Like it looks like Ponga can do a pretty good job of it now, but even still, on his day, a fit Turbo is the most dangerous Supercoach player in the comp. Yeah, because he can just do that himself. He'll just do it himself. Yeah. He'll just get it, and then all of a sudden, one run's turned into 50 points, and he'll do that a couple times, and you're like, shit. It's just he's his own worst enemy, man. That's a problem.
Yeah. And the annoying thing is, it's not annoying, but I can make arguments. It's currently at 10% ownership. I could make arguments for or against it being larger than that or lower than that. The argument for is we know how good he can be, as you just said, some of the points that he can get. And even last year, he did actually get some decent scores playing on one leg, which is a scary thought.
Well, he averaged 81.
He's in the Ponga category for mine when it comes to he could still make a bit of money depending on how he comes out. Like it sort of has taken me back a bit more now. I understand the draw a lot more. I haven't had time to sit down and go through Manly too much, but luckily with tonight's episode, I did a bit. And that makes me a bit more, because I'm not picking him to start with. I just can't have Tom Trbojevic 833K there, but at the same time, it's sort of like he could make cash if he became what we know he can become. But just knowing it's quality opposition, knowing that it's going to be hard games, which isn't, as we said, it's not ideal for him to come back and get the confidence and be hitting the ground running. I don't like 833 for Tom, but I can't knock anyone out there that's doing it. There's clearly a few that are. I can't knock you for doing it because there is plenty of upside to it. And if you've got we're talking about big balls on this, and I feel like we're going to have shirts made up soon about big balls. We like to talk about it. You've got some big balls picking him, and you deserve to be rewarded, I feel like, if you do start there.
it's a massive big ball play. You just run the risk. That's all it is. You just take the gamble that he's gonna, either continue and just absolutely brain it every week, or he's gonna go down injured. And when he goes down injured, you just accept it and you trade him away.
Yeah.
You don't think too much about it. But you ride the wave. I'm a massive fan of riding that wave. I do it almost every year. Whether I start with him, I tend to start with him too. I feel like if he's going to be on for the beginning of the season, that's kind of when you want him. You don't want to take any chances and wait a week to get him because he might not have that week. That's the kind of thing that I think about with Turbo. I thought, I can wait for this fixture in 5 rounds' time to get him at a really good optimal price. It's irrelevant because he might not make it there. But in the meantime, he might just kill it in those games. And it's funny, you go back and look at just the upcoming fixtures for him. He's played the Rabbitohs 3 times since 2018.
Oh, because he's probably been out.
Yeah. And he's played the Roosters 3 times since 2018. Yeah. And they're both back-to-back games, and neither of them are very impressive scores, 58, and then the Roosters 39. Like, there's a good chance he doesn't really do a great deal.
Selfishly, as rugby league fans, we deserve to see him back, and we deserve to see him as the Turbo. It would just be phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I just hope he's fit, because it seems like he is. But he says seems like he's fit every year. So,
and I'll say this last bit, I am nervous as hell not owning him. Oh, I am nervous as hell.
Yeah, I know. This would probably be one of the only years that I haven't got him in my team at the moment. And to be honest with you, I'm finding every way to try and fit him in there. And I really like seeing Ponga and Trbojevic in the team right next to each other. And that alone, man, like that on a group league, that's 300 points. You know what I mean? Like, if you can pull 300 points from 2 fullbacks, you're laughing. And I think you got a good shout for it with those two, more than anyone else. So, but again, it is a lot of coin to spend on so much risk. But who cares? You take the risk. If you're that set on him, because you know what he can do. He can do more than anyone else can. Take the risk on him. See what happens.
There's one stat I am sure about. 100% of Supercoach players to start the year will be sweating when Tom Trbojevic is on, because you're either sweating because you have him and you're wanting him to stay fit and on the field, or you're sweating because you don't have him and you're thinking, holy shit, do not hurt me too much. Yeah. So everyone will be sweating.
Pretty much. Yeah. I just hope it's not one of those things too where it's like Ponga has 2 quiet weeks and Turbo goes unbelievably good. And then you just see the tide turn, everyone switch over, and then Turbo gets injured, Things like that will happen, hopefully not, but they have the possibility to, because when something like that happens, when he steps up and just scores 200 points, you're guaranteeing that his next week ownership is going to skyrocket. You really want to have him for that. So it's a hard one to pass up, but it is risky. So I think it's worth the risk personally. It's more about how do you budget.
I understand that as well.
How do you budget having 2 of them? That's more than anything else. I'll happily run the risk every week. I don't care. That's fine. It's irrelevant for me. He's just bloody expensive to start. So where do I find the cash?
Pick him as your first pick. Pick him as your first pick in draft. You won't.
Pick as my first pick. 3rd.
Come on, number 3. You won't.
You know what? If I was 8th, I would.
I'll challenge you right now. Yeah, okay. He won't be there. Someone will pick him up. I actually wouldn't want to pick him in draft in a way, because I'd be so nervous.
That's where it's risky. That's for the drafters out there. If you're taking him, you're basically running your whole season on his fitness. Because if he stays fit, good chance you win.